very happy to invite everyone who joined to our seminar. It is a series of seminars about rural Jewry in Eastern Europe that will happen this semester and also in January. And we are happy to start with a very famous scholar, Judith Kalik, Dr. Judith Kalik from Hebrew University, who is renowned specialist in early modern history of Jews in Eastern Europe. And also, she is very known in her studies of economic and religious interaction between Jewish and non-Jewish population of this region. I remember I was very happy to see that your article about attitude of Orthodox to Jews is included in the reading list of Timothy Snyder for his Ukrainian course in Yale. So students in Yale are reading.
Many people told me about it, that they saw my name from colleagues, and I was really excited. Yes, of course.
And also we were lucky to have Judith Kalik at our program, Jewish Studies program at Ukrainian Catholic University a few years ago. And she was teaching for us, and she also recorded some videos for us that we are still using until this day. And today we will hear about a new project, a project that we also were conducting together with another scholar of Lviv, a fresh PhD, a fresh doctor, Nadia Skokova, which was dedicated to rural Jewry in Subcarpathian area. And I'm inviting Judith, the floor is yours, and we will be able to have discussion after the lecture.
Thanks. So I'm happy to be with you. Actually, I won't be concentrating on our mutual, I will mention our mutual project, which I'm very proud of. And I thought that Nadia and you will speak about later. I think it's a great achievement and it's really a nice work. I hope it will be published soon. But I won't concentrate on it. I decided, and since, when we corresponded, I thought it was also intended for students. So I thought to give something more general remarks about this field, which I studied from different points of view and different areas today and different eras. Yes, because I have also a book on the 19th, early 20th century in Minsk gubernia. I will show you my bibliography, so if you can, those of you that want to, read it more extensively on these topics. So I'll give some general remarks. And then also, so not to make it too dull, we will have some discussion, I hope, and even during my lecture. But I have to apologize and say that I would read my lecture. It's just easier for me to do it this way in English. So when it enables me to give more, to say more of what I want to say more clearly. So I will be reading a short part of my lecture, and then we can have also a discussion, right? Just a moment. To start with some general remarks for the students who will be maybe watching this video. There was, of course, a considerable rural Jewish population in early modern Eastern Europe. In fact, the presence of large Jewish population in villages as a distinct form of their residence in cities and small towns, shtetls, was one of the most distinctive features of East European Jewry. I'm saying this, I'm stressing this, to say that, that this is not a marginal topic, a topic that wasn't researched enough, and then now we will research it. It's really a major topic. According to the Jewish census of 1764-65, in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, more than 1/3 of employed Jews were leaseholders of various kinds. The fierce competition with burghers for propinatia, it means the right to produce and sell alcohol beverages, leaseholds in towns shifted the Jewish population into rural areas. By the end of the 18th century, Jews in villages made up almost 30% of the Jewish population in certain regions of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And in some regions, rural Jews constituted the absolute majority of the Jewish population. Thus, in 1764, according to the census of the Jewish population of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, 87% of the total Jewish population of Polish-Livonia in Flanders, now in Latvia, were rural dwellers, and according to the same census for Crown Poland, rural Jews constituted 84% of the total population of the Węgrów Jewish community in Podlasie. Now, Jewish settlement into rural areas began in earnest in the 16th century. Although we have a rural settlement of Jews, of course, outside Palestine, I mean, in the diaspora, also in the Middle Ages, but really in earnest, it began in the 16th century Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The 16th century, as you all know, was the age of the first globalization, when Europe began to dominate the world. In Europe itself, one united economic system had developed during this century. In the framework of this system, Western Europe began to play a role of town, of course, you know, while Eastern Europe gradually became a village. This happened because of the rapid pre-industrial urbanization in Western Europe, which caused growing demand for agricultural products, and the simultaneous agrarization of Eastern Europe in order to supply this demand. Paradoxically, the formation of united economic system in Europe caused opposite political, social, and economic tendencies in the West and in the East. If in the West, the leading trend was in favor of centralization, decline of nobility, and flourishing cities, in the East, on the contrary, central authority weakened, power of nobles grew, towns declined, and the village became a center of the economy, and not only of the economy, of course. It should be stressed that this agrarization of Eastern Europe was a part of the modernization, not a return to the traditional agrarian society of the previous age. So Jews initially entered the practice of leaseholding by way of their traditional involvement in money lending. Land values rose because of the development of more advanced agricultural techniques and growing profitability of agricultural production. On the one hand, this made mortgaging of rural estates more profitable, as the borrower could then repay a loan from the estate income rather from his own cash reserves. But on the other hand, the same process led to the gradual monopolization of landholding rights by the nobility. Additionally, the Jews who were formerly denied such rights by the legislation of 1496 found it increasingly difficult to take out mortgages because they could not assume ownership of land in case of default. As a result, raising money on real estate from Jews could only be achieved by leasing it to them, since in that case, ownership could not change hands. Leasing rural estates to Jews was increasingly widespread until the mid-17th century. However, as this form of leasing became more profitable with the development of the folwark system, it began to attract the lower and middle nobility. With the expansion of the economic and political power of Polish-Lithuanian magnates from the mid-17th century, leases of large landed estates began to serve political rather than economic ends. Magnates preferred to lease estates to their noble clients in order to secure the latter's loyalty in local and national political arenas. As a result, Jews were effectively excluded from leasing large estates, though they continued to lease the smaller estates of lower and middle nobility, especially in regions which these forms of land ownership were dominant. In the private sector, the politicization of leasehold on the politicization of leaseholds on the estate gave the lease of monopoly rights greater economic significance. This included milling, fishing, use of forest products, and the sale of salt and tobacco. By far, the most important item was the so-called propinatia, the estate owner's monopoly on the production and sale of alcohol. Its importance stemmed from the fact that the sale of alcohol at local markets was the easiest and least expensive way to afford any estate's agricultural surplus. Because of the difference in grain prices between Eastern and Western Europe, grain shipment to the Baltic ports was a very profitable business. But it was also very costly and insecure, since river navigation was closed in winter, and the rivers of grain-producing Ukraine, for example, flow to the Black Sea, which was closed for commerce by the hostile Ottoman Empire. Although the method of distilling pure alcohol had already been discovered in the Middle Ages, commercial vodka produced from grain spirit appeared first at about 1500. And its production and sale to the local propination soon became the cheapest way for the landowner to convert grain into cash. The leasing of inns and taverns where alcohol was sold to the local population became a typical Jewish occupation. In taking over this sector of the economy, Jews displaced peasants, burghers, and Orthodox priests who were also interested in competing for leaseholds. In fact, before the profitability of propinatia leases became clear in the 16th century, the majority of inn and tavern keepers had been hereditary peasant leaseholders in the Catholic part of the Commonwealth. The success of Jews in ousting them was above all a result of their ability to pay in advance and to bear the constant rise in the cost of leases, caused by the growing profits and inflation. Hereditary leaseholders survived to a certain extent on royal and ecclesiastical estates, but had practically disappeared on magnate estates by the mid-17th century. However, Jewish leaseholdings were so profitable that they were also enacted on royal and even ecclesiastical estates, despite of explicit synodal prohibitions. Of course, this type of Jewish settlement in the rural area, especially in ecclesiastical estates, are totally unresearched, or almost totally unresearched. Awareness of the importance of rural Jewish life has grown lately, and several important studies were dedicated to this subject. However, the existing research concentrates on a Jewish rural tavern and on the figure of the Jewish tavern-keeper on the one hand, and neglecting the other rural Jews, as well as the contacts of urban Jews with the non-Jewish villagers. However, the Jewish tavern of the pre-partition Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth is usually described without attention to regional differences in forms of leaseholding. This is my first methodological remark. In the post-partition period, on the contrary, different parts of the former Commonwealth, Kingdom of Poland, Austrian Galicia, Russian Ukraine, and Belarus are studied separately without substantial comparison among them. Some regional differences surely have been observed, such as the practical absence of the Jewish leaseholders in Great Poland, and the great concentration of Jewish rural leaseholders in Podlasia and Eastern Mazovia. Most of the scholars also usually preoccupied with the relations of rural Jewish leaseholders with their noble lords, rather than with their non-Jewish co-villagers. Of course, famous books like Moshe Rossman's Lord's Jews, Adam Teller's about the books about the Rajivis, those are very important studies, but they all go in one path of the Jews or rural Jews as part of the manor. Leaseholders with their noble lords, and the co-villagers, sorry. Another common stereotype is that the peasants are usually perceived, and this is my second methodological remark, as a homogeneous social group. In practice, rural population was composed of several social strata, such as the leadership of the village, Vuit and his deputies, the ordinary peasant servants with their own household, kmechi, and others, landless hired agricultural workers and servants such as kmorniki and chalopniki, rural parish priests, etc. The interaction of the rural Jews with each of these social groups took different and diverse forms. I myself dedicated several studies to the subject of the rural Jews in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, as well as in the Russian Empire and Austrian Galicia, where I tried to address these complex questions. I'd like to, now just a moment, I would like to share this that I shared with you before. Take me one moment. So this? No, it's not this. Sorry. Sorry. I'll try to. Is this one? No, it's not this one. Sorry, I lost my bibliography that I wanted to share with you. Where could it be? This is this, maybe it's this. Yes, it's this. I wanted to share this with you. So here I prepared, of course, I'm not the only scholar dealing with rural Jews, yes, but I wanted to share a little bit of, the things I write. And then when you can see by the topics I will address this, this is our forthcoming book on the mountain Jews, this is the Minsk gubernia, which I talked about, and I can't talk about it today because today I'm concentrating on the early modern period. And this is about Jewish Lisa. I will say some things about the rest of the topics I put here, because they're all spotlights. I tried to put a spotlight on different problems, different types of lack in research. So just a moment. Okay. So we can see what I mean. Just a moment. Concerning the local differences in rural Jews' experience, I emphasized, among other things, in my study on the rural Jews of Minsk gubernia in the 19th century, the differences between the duration of rural leaseholds in Belarus, where short-term contracts prevailed, and Ukraine, where long-term contracts were typical. In my part of our collective mentioned study on the mountain Jews of Eastern Galicia, I emphasized the unique features of rural Subcarpathian area, such as an importance of the Jewish involvement in the salt industry in there. In my article on the Jewish leaseholders, I isolated a special area which I called the leaseholders belt, stretching from Podlasia to the Carpathian Mountains, where villages continued to be leased to Jews in the 18th century, unlike in other regions of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, where such a practice stopped as I mentioned before, in the mid-17th century. I summarized this and other regional differences in the forms of the rural leaseholds in my forthcoming article, Jewish Tavern Here and There. In my article on the relationship between urban centers of Jewish communities and their rural peripheries, svivot, I demonstrate that the villages were not permanently attached to the urban centers, but were periodically distributed between them. In my study on the interaction between rural Jews and various strata of their co-villagers, I have shown, among other things, that the Vuit often stood as an intermediary between the Jews and their villagers and the village's owner, and that relationship between the Jews and rural Orthodox priests were mainly characterized by the competition for propination rights between them. Now, in our today's discussion, I would like to raise several methodological problems on top of those that I mentioned already, exemplifying them by some groups of sources which are rarely used in the context of the rural Jews. The matter is that rural Jews were mostly studied in the framework, as I said, of a rural estate on the basis of documents related to Jewish leaseholders and their noble lords, which survive in private archives of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the magnates. However, these documents, with all their importance, leave aside everyday interaction between the rural Jews and their Christian co-villagers. In order to reveal this side of the Jewish experience in the closed rural microcosm, we need to examine entirely different groups of sources, which are many. I can't explore them all today, but I would like to point out some of them today, such as, for example, rabbinical responsa, or communal minutes, pinkasim, and rural courts records, which is not inner Jewish source, but a general source. The problem is that the rabbinical responsa were traditionally studied as a source for the history of halakha. And I have to say that this is the situation till even nowadays. Sometimes, even when some regular information is used, it's used from the point of view of the history of the law, of the history of halakha, not as just regular source for everyday life, yes? And not as reflection of real life situations. Communal minute books were used also mainly as a source for a history of internal Jewish communal politics and the rural court records were completely neglected. As far as as Jews are concerned, of course, otherwise they were quite widely used by Polish scholars, by Ukrainian scholars, but not in the context of the Jewish problem. Here are some examples. Now I want you to follow me. For example, I hope I would just a moment, would be able to share with you this now. So moment. Just up. So you can all see, right?
Judith, we have some problem. There is some problem with the document. At least I see it as part of it is just black.
Yeah.
I don't know if others have the same problem, but
It's the same.
say maybe you just now it's fine. We only we cannot see the entire document. We see like the part of it.
Now?
And now it's good, yes.
Now it's good. All right. So I would like to see, for example, I will give you a citation and I want to make it a discussion now, all right? So this is a citation from the Council of Four Lands. Of course, I could, of the Diet of the Council of Four Lands, yes, the Vad Arba Aratzot from 1607. So we can read it together. It shall be announced in all communities that no person shall make cheese and butter just a moment, I can see, in villages for sale to the Jews, until he will bring it to the chairman of his rabbinical court, and this rabbi shall investigate his actions, and if he is a decent man, he shall issue a signed license. So what can you say about this? What do you think about it? I mean, we see it as a halachic problem, right? What is the problem? The problem is we think that the production of dairy products in the village is what? It has to be supervised, because otherwise it's not kosher, it's halab nukri, and so on, you know. So what preoccupies the council at first glance is this, right? But let me continue and show you the legislation.
Yeah, color.
No, I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now the Council of the Kochim, right? The Jewish Council. Someone want to ask something, because I hear. Do you hear it?
No, someone forgot to turn off the microphone.
Okay, the Council of the Kochim, 1691. We list all milking of sheep in all rural peripheries, Svivot, and all regional councils, Glilot, which belong to us, to the elders Yekutiel, son of Moses Zalman, Judah, son of Lev, and Isaac Isaac, son of Chaim, for 200 zloty. From now on, the three above mentioned persons shall lease all milking in companionship from all authorities and nobles in all villages, which are in our rural periphery, and no person shall touch even a margin of their business in any action or trick even slightly. If anyone will transgress this ruling, all cheese which we will produce will be considered torn, treifot, and it shall be forbidden for all members of our community to buy from him even of pound. Any householder from our community or any citizen who will import to our community sheep cheese from milking outside of our rural periphery shall give to the above mentioned person 2 pounds of cheese from every stone. But no one shall have a right to sell in our community a part of the above mentioned persons, and all milking shall be theirs until the festival of Saint Michael in the year 5452, September 29, 1792. Okay. So tell me, please, what can we understand from this document about this dairy business? Of course, there are many other, not only of dairy products, it's just one of the topics, you see. But I want you to see how it develops, you know, how those sources give us a totally different view of these problems. So what can we see here? What problems can be extended? Well, someone wants to say something about it?
So, but the first document is a prescriptive document, yes, and the second one, it speaks about some situations that already happened as about, or is it also prescriptive?
It explains that actually the interest in dairy products is not only halachic problem of is it kosher or not, but a problem of income, of course, of great income for the major community. You know, it gives chazaka, which is called a monopoly, you know, on the, what is the problem? The problem is that in the community, rich Jews wants to lease it, right? But local leaseholders that sits in the village Jewish want also to be the intermediate man between the town and the village, you see? And it's a conflict of interest. And of course, the selling of this monopoly and the keeping of it from the point of the Jewish community here is very important. So we can see here a multiple, such sources enable us to see many things. What were the village in the structure of the Jewish community, the place of the village? From it, not only for the stories how Jews from villages came to pray in Yom Kippur or something like that in the town, but we can see the network, you see, of interests. Yes, let me see. I'm not convincing you. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. So let's see another case, okay? So this is a responsa. Everyone know what is a responsa? Well, I make it sure also for students that will be watching it that it's when a person have an halakhic problem, it's a huge corpus of documents. He asks the rabbi, he writes to the rabbi, or someone on his behalf writes to rabbinical authority, and this rabbi responds. And of course, the question is halakhic, but the sources for everyday life is very important. So here we have the Ephraim Zalman Margaliot, of Brody, that you can see, and his question. It happened in one village that an evil man and Baal Blial and Ben Blial said to the lord of the village, I fornicated with your wife. The husband asked his wife, and she said that the adulterer was in the room when she entered in order to take a bag of cheese, and he attacked her with force and came upon her, and the daughter said that this was willingly. Is she allowed to her husband? What do you say? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So there are two. I don't understand the role of the butter here, and I mean the question about adultery. Yes, about the question whether they can have sexual relationship. Yes, the man and his wife.
Yes, the halakhic question is beside it's not for interest for us. Yes, the halakhic question is that someone boasted that he had relationship with the head of the village, but let me see, just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment, I consider. So, first of all, who is let us say, who is the lord of the village?
That the head, that the minor owner. No?
No, he's a Jew, of course.
He had to be Jewish because the question is about his wife. So it's connected. The Lord, I assume that he's a leaseholder of the village. Yes.
Yes, he's the leaseholder of the village. As I said, it's also very interesting because he leases the whole village, which is in these parts are as we said, very interesting. But yes, he's Jewish, of course, because otherwise he won't be send his questions to the rabbi, yes, about what he should do. So this lord of the village, he also, it doesn't say, I didn't bring all the answer, but I will make it short and tell you that this Jewish lord of the village, he's also the one selling the cheese, you see? That his wife has gone into the room to take the cheese, which she's giving to the customers, and then she saw the bad man already waiting for her there. And this is her excuse that she didn't fornicate with him,
She was attacked, yeah.
She was attacked, of course, yes. So, Just a moment. This, just a moment. Just a moment. I'm sorry for the technical problems I have. I'm trying to find my text. But I'm not very good of doing this for some reason. Okay. So let me read to you what I wrote about it. So the problem is that the husband of the victim of the sexual assault is described as the lord of the village, as we said, Baal Akfar. And since he is asking the rabbi whether his wife is allowed to him after sexual contact with another man, he is presumably Jewish. However, the collection of rabbinical response Beit Ephraim was published in Lviv in 1818, reflecting the reality of Austrian Galicia in the early 19th century, long before Jews were permitted to own rural estates, which took place only after the 1860s. This probably means that this lord of the village was in fact a general leaseholder of the noble owner of this village. The reference to the victim buying cheese from the offender is also significant. We have seen that Jewish communal leadership tightly controlled cheese production in the rural peripheries, granting exclusive rights to milk sheep to certain Jews of their choice. Therefore, it is possible that the perpetrator of the sexual assault boasts that he fornicated with a wife of the lord of the village because of conflicts of the violation of his exclusive rights to sell cheese in this village. In this case, the leaseholder's wife became an innocent victim of purely commercial conflict. So you see, you have a problem of sexuality, but rather it's a problem of business and of monopoly. Numerous urban Jewish women also visited villages as peddlers, selling urban goods and buying agricultural products, including cheese. This communal council, the Communal Council of Ivenets, issued in 1759 a special resolution forbidding to Jewish women to enter villages without male escort and to drink in rural taverns. So non-Jewish craftswomen also visited villages offering their services. An encounter between them and the rural Jews could take a rather unexpected turn. The reference to such an encounter is found in a rabbinical response written by Yechezkel Landau of Apatov, which served as excuse me. Sorry, it's my daughter, I have to answer, who served as judge in Brody and Yampil in Ukraine. So the case concerned incest committed by the grandfather with his granddaughter. Let's see it now if I can only, what can I do? You see the text, right? Hello?
Yes, we can see everything.
So you can see the text. So I received this letter where he asked about a case that happened in one of the villages under authority. That voice of shame came out about a married woman by one stranger woman who came to the house of Israel to ask whether they have knives to sharpen, since this was her craft. During the conversation, the stranger woman said naively that she was amazed to see in one Jewish house here a young girl married to an old man, and the woman who owned the house replied to the stranger woman, There is no girl in this village who is married to an old man. And what did you see to understand that that girl is an old man's wife? And the stranger woman replied that she saw between them an act of marriage. And when the woman heard these things, she announced the thing in public. And when the woman heard that there is a young girl in that village, and one old man who lived in another village had come only that day to that village, and the girl is the daughter of the old man's son. And because of the stories of the stranger woman, there was a rumor about the above girl, she being a married woman. And the young woman went to the authorities and asked them to find the one who brought a bad name on her for nothing because she is pure. Then that stranger woman was called to the authorities, and they forced her to tell what she saw about the old man and the girl. And she replied that she saw nothing ugly, only that they were together in one room. Then her mother-in-law went and questioned her, and she repeated her words, "I did not sin." And then her husband came and interrogated her and promised that he would not betray her. Only if she fornicated, she should repent. Then she admitted afterwards also in front of other men and women. She said that the day that the stranger woman said that she saw them in act of marriage, the old man did not do anything, just grabbed her between his arms against her will, only by force. But in the month of Elul, the year before, she was giving birth, and her grandfather was at the time at the village. And before dawn, early in the morning, the old man came to her house because he knew that her husband was not at home, and she was lying in her bed, and her baby was with her in the bed. And the old man came on her by force. She told him, "How could you commit such a serious offense while I also have a husband?" He replied that it is not an offense, and she shouldn't, and she shouted, but her voice was not heard because of the weakness of her being after giving birth. The witness asked her, "Why did you not stand against this evil man in fighting and in everything that could save you?" And she replied that she thought that if she caused, אסתר, אני באמצע הרצאה, תתקשרי לאבא. I'm sorry. The witness asked her, "Why did you not stand against this evil man in fighting and in everything that could save you?" And she replied that she thought that if she caused a bruise or injury to his body, this would be considered a crime, since he is her grandfather. And she tells her husband, "If you want to divorce me, this is your right." And the husband believes in her words. He just comes and asks if she is allowed or forbidden for him, and he is obliged to divorce her. Okay. Okay, so I would really want us to do this one, you know, sorry, disappeared somewhere. I don't see you, I just see myself. I don't know why. Lada, can you do something about it?
What happened?
I see only myself. I don't know. Somehow.
Yes, you should. There is like on the top of Zoom. You can pick whatever you want to see yourself, gallery.
Yes, yeah, I know, but I just missed it. Okay, so wonderful source, right? Let's do it because it's boring, you know, just to hear me lecture. So this really demonstrates how wonderful these sources are. Why do you think? Ah, well, this is, you know, Me Too. I used it in an article that is called Me Too. which I am not now about, Me Too in the 17th century, which I am not now about to publish. So it's not only for rural Jews, but the question that is our concern now is how it allows us to see more fully the picture of rural Jews and their lives, how this source help us to see it from another point of view. It broadens our view of the village and Jews in the village. What do you think? Did you like the source? Is it it's a horrible story, of course, but from the point of view, it's historical source,
It was a little bit difficult to follow because all of this, who is related to whom, and like in the beginning,
the general story is clear, I think. A gossiper, a Gentile woman, which goes over all the houses in this village and other villages and sharpened knives. She peeked through the window, and she saw an act of marriage. You can understand what she has seen, right? And she gossips with the Jewish lady that she sharpens her knives with, and they said, well, have you seen such a thing? It's an old man. Of course, this old man can be 40 years old, yes? And this his granddaughter can be 15 or 14, because marriages went like that. Early marriages were very common. So, and the woman that knows the village and knows all the Jews in the village, she's of course very surprised because she do not know such marriage in the village. And then, so what can we say, scholars? Let us stop on this. About the village, about the Jews in the village, about their relations with Gentiles.
Well, the life look less isolated than we can assume when we have this idea how early modern communities were isolated one from another, and here we see that they are very, very close, and they are helping to. The Christian woman is helping to have a justice, yes, for.
She even testifies before the Beit Din, yes, she is going to testify. And you can see that the real portrait of the village society, how it looked, this everyday life, this neighborly relations, between Gentiles and Jews, between the Jews themselves inside this little rural society. I don't know, I'm trying to convince you. I don't know if I'm, able to do so, but
also they have to speak the same language. Those two women are discussing the problem in the same language. We don't know which one, but still.
Of course, they understand each other. Probably not in Yiddish and not in Hebrew, but in Ruthenian. Yes,
Possibly.
Yes, possibly. Of course, from this region. Yes, in this region, and so on. So you have many. This source is wonderful because you have many different paths to walk here through such a source. So let us see. Now, as we can see, the case took place in a village where everyone knew one another, and it was disclosed by a strange woman, an itinerant urban craftswoman who passed through the village, offering her services. The victim of the sexual abuse herself turned to the court not with an accusation against the offender, but on the contrary, a complaint against the local woman who identified her and her grandfather as those whom the stranger woman saw having sex. Only after an interrogation by her mother-in-law and husband did she admit that her grandfather first sexually harassed her and then raped her, taking advantage of her weakness after giving birth. Incest between a grandfather and his granddaughter is a rare, and in our case, is probably reflects the practice of early marriages, as I said, which reduce the age gap between generations. The victim's initial denial shows that feelings of shame and self-recrimination were prevalent in this case also. Records of the rural communal courts also preserve many vivid references to the everyday interaction between rural Jews and local peasants. Rural courts, sąd wiejski, in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth were held under the chairmanship of village's major, sołtys, and were composed of their peasant jury, ławnicy. Rural Jews were subjected to these courts on equal grounds with their Christian co-villagers. Cases which involve Jewish tavern keepers usually reflect drinking habits of their customers. In 1764, Maciej Wydżak, the miller in the ecclesiastical village Węgrów, used to sell to the Jewish innkeep various implements of his mill, such as bolts, railings, etc., bringing the mill to standstill. The community asked the econom manager of the village to replace the drunkard with another miller. The latter, however, swore on a cross in 1765 that he will never again enter the Jewish inn, and only his wife will be allowed to bring him some vodka as a remedy in case of his illness. The record of the rural court at the village of Chukwa in the royal estate of Sambir from the 17th and 18th centuries provide a unique, vivid picture of the everyday life in this village in all its complexity. By the way, I have to say that I'm most grateful to Nadia Skokova for, without her, I couldn't get the scans of this village court of Chukwa and discover all this wonderful information. It's all thanks to Nadia. So rural Jews were involved in numerous judicial cases, which involved their customers in taverns, their Christian servants and other employees, and their other co-villagers. Most interesting is that these records, unlike similar rural courts documents published by Bolesław Ulanowski, for example, this is unpublished. It's of course it's handwritten. It's a manuscript, yes. Provide not only descriptions of the judicial cases, but also transcripts of the direct speech of sides involved and their witnesses. This is really beautiful. The most picturesque case involving Jewish tavern customers was a shooting incident reported in 1685. A noble, Andrzej Strzelecki, with his son Stefan, attended a tavern of Avraham Moshkovich, which was overcrowded at that time. When Stefan, who held a pistol in his belt, suddenly shot and accidentally wounded a peasant Fedka Socha, to whom he had to pay a large compensation. Andrzej claimed that a Jewish boy who served in the tavern drew the pistol from Stefan and made a shot. Therefore, he demanded the Jewish leaseholder is responsible for the incident and he should compensate his expenses. Since the first witness, Mikołaj Lechonich, was ill and could not attend the court, two members of the jury were sent to him in order to interrogate him. And he testified under oath that Stefan made a shot while the Jewish boy was near the door at the time of shooting. The second witness was a furrier selling hats in the tavern. He testified that the Jewish boy held a hat in his hands at the time of the shooting. The third witness said that the boy helped his grandmother, who was buying a hat from a furrier, who was the second witness. The fourth witness was a serf of Gabriel Tlazowski from another village who stayed in the Jewish inn in Chukwa. He confirmed the testimony of the third witness, adding that the furrier was sitting on a bench at the other end of the table. The court cleared the boy of all charges and dismissed the claims of Andrzej Strzelecki. This case mirrors the everyday life of rural tavern well beyond the shooting incident itself. Poor noble drinking with peasants and short of money. A furrier selling hats to taverns customers. A peasant from another village staying in an inn. And the three generations of the Jewish leaseholders family, including his mother and his son, all present in his tavern. And of course, all the testimonies that were in favor of the Jewish family and the Jewish boy, of Gentiles, yes, of the customers. Women and girls, after employed as servants by the Jewish leaseholders, contrary to the strict prohibitions of this practice by the church, which sometimes led to sexual relations between them. The most interesting defamation case was submitted to the court of Chukwa in 1683 by a Jewish leaseholder, David Moshkovich, against his former female servant, Anna, who accused him in an adultery with another female servant. This case deserves to be quoted in full, since it includes verbatim statements of those involved in their own words. Now, just a moment, let us see. Just a moment. Try to share it with you. No, this is not it. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, maybe someone else can, because I'm already speaking an hour and my throat is just to read aloud this case, the Rural Court of Chukwa, 1683. Someone wants to read it aloud? Please, just because my throat is already...
I can do it, but my English is imperfect, so I...
Oh, but mine is perfect, so...
Okay, so it's Rural Court of Chukwa, 1683. In the lawsuit and legal action between the infidel David Moshkovich, the leaseholder of Chukwa, the plaintiff, and a woman called Anna, his former servant, between whom a great controversy took place on a matter of unfair things, in which the infidel David, standing before our court of Chukwa, accused the aforesaid Anna, saying that she connected me with the breweress, claiming that she allegedly found me in a carnal excess with the breweress, but I am not guilty of these things at all, and she falsely defames me in public, for which I ask for justice. The aforesaid Anna...
He sues her, so you see the...
But yeah. Okay, I'm lost. I'm lost. For justice. The aforesaid Anna, standing in court, responded thus: "These are true things in which I caught them. After the Easter, I don't remember in which day, they were between the tops. At once, I approached the leaseholder's wife."
By the way, this it's not. I didn't erase it. It was erased in the text. It's in the manuscript itself. It's omitted in the what they were exactly doing between the tops. Yes.
Yeah, we can imagine. At once, I approached the leaseholder's wife and told her the same, and she replied to me on these things: "When you were healthy, you yourself were pregnant from him." The leaseholder's wife said, standing in court, I never heard this from her, and I'm ready to testify this under oath, not only for this year, but also for all the time when we reside together."
Okay, just a moment. Stop share. Thank you, Lada, for saving my throat a little bit. I'm very grateful. So, just a moment. This is not it. Okay, as we can see, this case probably arose out of the jealousy of one female servant to another towards their Jewish employer. The court fully accepted the version of David, taking into account also a testimony of the brewer's husband, the brewer Hrinko, who pledged for the innocence of his wife and condemned Anna to 30 lashes of flogging. However, immediately after the verdict, Anna submitted to the court her own complaint against David, demanding from him her unpaid salary of 10 zlotys for 1 year of service. The court partially accepted her demand and obliged David to pay 5 zloty for half a year of work. So, to conclude more or less, we have seen that the sources presented here provide a deep insight into the mutual life of Jewish and non-Jewish villagers of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. However, other sources, so far also neglected, such as bishop visitations, estates inventories, royal estates illustrations, censuses, and taxation assessment lists, provide a vital statistics and other quantitative data on the rural Jewish population in the 16th, 18th century. And I very much hope that all this work will be done maybe by next generations, you know. Thank you for your attention. It was a little tense and long. So
thank you, Judith, for your talk, and thank you for all the documents that you shown us and you introduced us to your workshop as a historian. It was all very interesting and all very like passionate. A lot of sexual crimes and so on. And
yes, I tried to make it a little bit interesting, you know, to pick up the cases which are more.
And yeah, we open now this for discussion. And if you have any question, you just raise your hand and speak, or just speak, and you are welcome. I guess we had more early modernists at the beginning, and they left in the middle because one of them has a small child and has to
Right,
look after him. I was curious about.
Yeah, the other participants can say something. I'm not familiar with all, you know. With some I was familiar, some. But I am familiar. I was familiar with someone who left, but I'm not familiar with others, and I would like to hear what they are doing. Are they interested in rural Jews or general rural history or and so on? So I would gladly hear something about it. And one, you know, what methodological problems do you see in this field?
I have a question regarding Podlasie, because you mentioned that this belt of leaseholder belt, and why do you think these areas became leaseholder belt, and why
this is why you know I brought my bibliography, because I have a whole article about it. It was you know. You can see in my bibliography of this rural question. This is an area where small Schlachter dominated, you know, landless or small Schlachter with very, and this is I began of that you know, Jews were ousted of general leases in magnate estates, because magnates they wanted their clients, the middle Schlachter, the lower Schlachter, to get these leases, the general leases, because of course no Schlachtitz would be a tavern-keeper, you know, but he did wanted to lease the estate, parts of the estate, of course not all the estate and so on. So Jews were ousted, but they weren't ousted in regions where middle Schlachter dominated, and we know almost nothing about Jews that leased these villages. That, and in general, we know very little about the relations of Jews with other Schlachter groups. You know, we know mainly about Jews and magnates. Of course, Jews and magnates is very important, you know, and so on. It's important, especially from the second half of the 17th century, the 18th century, when we have what is called usually the oligarchy of the magnates and so on and so forth. This is a major force, and of course, major force which influenced most of all the position of the Jews in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. But we have to remember that this is not all, you know. The situation was more complicated. And it's not only the Jews resided on and leased property of small Schlachta, of middle Schlachta, and so on, but they were also a part of the bigger game between the different stratas of the Schlachta and the magnates, the patron-client relationships, because Jews were also sort of clients of their magnate patrons as other stratas of Polish society. So, yes. But generally speaking, yes, the point is that I know it from the Poglówne, you know, it's part of my research that I did for my book about, which I didn't quote here, on the VAD, on the Jewish Council of Four Lands, you know, the Scepter of Judah, my book that is called Scepter of Judah, which is mainly based on list of poll tax, Jewish poll tax payments. So you have a very systematic image there of this. You can systematically say where were it's not like you have some case of Jew who is a leaseholder, but you can give the whole picture, which I do also in the article and in the book, but in the article in more details, yes. And Tomasz wants to ask something. What should I do?
May I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but...
Oh, wonderful. I'm very interested in the Carpathian mountain region, and I understand you have done work on that. When in the early modern period do you see the influx of Jews into the mountains? And also, I mean, into the Piedmont, I guess, is more proper than the mountains themselves. And I was wondering a bit about the interaction of Jews and the petty noble, the Ruthenian petty nobility, also in the villages.
Yes. And so we did a great project there, and there are other periods also. So Jews actually appeared there already in a very early period, already in the Middle Ages. Yes, we have a chapter in the book that I have written that is about the Middle Ages and the different, of course, why, how. I can't give now another lecture, but I really hope that soon enough everyone will be able. And we did an enormous work from archival point of view, and this is all thanks to Nadia again. So Nadia, thank you, because of course I worked at the Lviv archive and other archives, but only for a few weeks. I can't say sit there, you know, for a week. So I need some cooperation and this cooperation was wonderful, really. So I think it would be very interesting to all to read it and to see.
Yes, I would love to read the book. When does it come out?
Well, we just finished it, and it's now we finished writing it, right? Nadia, Lada has some remarks to make yet, but in general, it goes to language editing now, so it will take, I hope, not too much time, but
I hope not. I look very much forward to it.
Maybe we'll publish some article before. I don't know. I thought about it. We should discuss it. I think
Thank you.
Worthwhile to doing that. Yes, Tomasz, I'm sorry. I wanted to, you know, but I.
Thank you. Hi, you.
Thank you for your question. But you are interesting. You wrote something about it, not about Jews, about I mean, in the mountain Jews. I mean, you just have an interest in it.
Patrice, I guess this question is for you about Carpathians, why you are interested in Carpathians.
Yes. It's not for Tomasz, but
oh, I'm sorry. I'm working on
my classes because, you know,
I'm working on a book looking at the Carpathian mountains in through history.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm very interested in the way society in the mountains looked and differed, among other things, but also in all the economic side of things. Again, I'm sure the Jews were involved in the salt trade, for example, as you mentioned, and the lumber trade and so on and so forth. And I want to get a big picture of the fabric of that society, which you were giving us such a wonderful example of today in your talk.
Yes, yes, yes. We have a very, we draw a map of the salt, all the leases of salt mines. Really, it was done. I hope you will be. Maybe Lada, what do you think? Maybe we should do some article or something, announcing the book, so people won't have to wait for 2 years, some of the results or something like that. Yes.
Oh, please.
I could give a lecture. I could have given a lecture on that, but I thought you are interested in the, more general approach to the problem of rural Jews. So I didn't concentrate on this topic, but well, maybe Lada herself will tell something about the salt mines and so on from later on in this wonderful seminar. Sorry, Tomasz, so your question.
No problem. So I have a question. Maybe you spoke about this, but I had a very important call from my mother-in-law, so I couldn't follow you all the time.
Mother-in-law is sacred,
Yeah, just like you. So, but maybe you spoke. What do you think? To what extent we can speak that the Jewish rural population, to what extent it was separated from the Jewish urban population? If we can take a dynamic look on people's life trajectories, isn't it maybe that the rural Jews were urban Jews who every few years decided to have a lease in the village nearby and then come back to the city for a few years and then move to another village? Or maybe it's rather, if once you decide to live in a village, you continue and rarely come back to the urban space.
Yes, you see, so really you have to read my article, which is to be published, but soon enough in the Indiana Press, you have it in the bibliography. So there I really bring the statistic, and I show that in Belarus, and Belarusia, this was the case exactly as I wrote, that they were essentially urban dwellers that came to do their business, young couples doing some interest, mounting some money to open a business in the town and so on. And the population has, you can see it, that it changes every few years and so on. But in Ukraine, for example, the situation was quite different. You have families sitting in the village for generations. You can see generations of one family sitting in the village, for many years. So this is one angle of this question. The other angle, which I try to touch here, and I touch in my research, is the fact that Jews were performing in urban services in the village. They were villagers, but from the point of view of their role, their economic role, I'm not talking about Jews which were engaged in agriculture. This is a separate question. But most of the Jews sitting in the villages in the early modern period, not later on. Later on, we have different kinds of things, but were just, even if they sat in the village for generations, they weren't peasants. You see, they performed a kind of economic role, a city economic role. I don't know how to say it, I guess. So this is also important. And the third aspect of this question is the part that they were all part of the Jewish community of the city. We talked here about Svivot and so on. So they were formally attached to a Jewish community. They were subjugated to its rulings, to its monopolies, to the politics. Who sells what? Can they buy not only the dairy products, but for example, the honey and so on from their co-villagers and sell it to their brothers in the village, or the Jewish merchant from the city will come and have a monopoly to buy it himself from the villagers, and so on and so forth. So this question has manifold aspects. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I know that we try to touch this question in our book, and I still have some issues about it. The question of how the cultural, I don't know, type of these Jews, and you mentioned at the beginning that minor Jews are much more researched than those rural Jews. So, and we know a lot about minor Jews and how they later in the 19th century try to own their own manors and try to become landlords, and how they are borrowing the lifestyle. So what can we tell about these rural Jews? Are they borrowing from the peasants? Are they borrowing from petty nobility, some cultural norms? Because I think you can, how different are they? Can you tell from your sources?
Yes, but this is a topic, this is very interesting topic. As for example, the Jews, rural Jews differed. This is what I'm saying. For example, in Ukraine, when you see Jews living in the village for generations, you see them more and more influenced by peasant culture, but by peasant beliefs, by going to sorcerers, peasants going to Jewish sorcerers, and vice versa, and so on in different levels. But when you have these couples that go only for a few years and then move back to the city, for example, I tried to explain the appearance of Hasidism in Ukraine on this background, on this socio-economic background, that there was no large extent of Hasidism in Lithuania, only Litvaks, because of that, because the duration of Jewish life in the village was short. So of course, this is a large issue. You can talk about it, another lecture, another topic, but yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you have some other questions, we still have 7 minutes until the end.
Exactly, I have a question, may I? With regard to this all sexual assault and so on, it was really common topic in Polish anti-Jewish literature. And the authors accuse the leaseholders, generally the Jews, about sexual abuse. And thanks to these sources, the sources you show us, we may compare this both situation, the reality of the anti-Jewish writers, their works and so on, and also the real events. So I think that is curious to show this contrast between the reality and between the reality shaped by the authors of anti-Jewish works.
Yes, if you are interested in that, I have an article about it, because I also wrote a lot about the Catholic Church and the Jews, and also other churches, not only Catholic, and there I bring also Polish authors and Jews. But in general, what can I say? Some of the accusations were right, but I can say that also priests, raped local peasant girls, and we have a lot of, such complaints. Well, this is another topic. So, but of course, this was the mode of life. When servants lived in the house, inside the Jewish house, of course, things like that happened. And as I said many years ago, it shocked my Christian colleagues, but for a Jew to have an intercourse with his wife when she is not pure is a much greater sin than to have intercourse with his not Jewish servant. So there you have it. It doesn't mean, of course, that this was a model behavior or every Jew did it and so on and so forth. But of course, when was the reality, people lived under the same roof. And by the way, it was a problem not only with Gentile servants, but also with Jewish servants, because Jews had also Jewish servants at their houses. Usually, these servants, well, they were on another level, but of course, girls that lost their parents, that were orphans, and then some more wealthy Jew took them until they were married. And we have also interconjugal problems. This is from the point of view of halacha, by the way, it's much more problematic, you know. So this is the real life. Yes, but thank you. It's of course it's very, your remark is very, very to the point. Yes.
Yeah, but it's also really interesting that the Jewish woman and the Christian woman could cooperate. As you said, the Christian woman testified together with to defend the Jewish woman. So this not only stranger, but also there were our Jews, and they were the members of the same community, not only the Jews and the Christian,
This is exactly what I wanted to show you reading this, you know, choosing these specific sources. Wanted to show you that unlike, you know, this religious literature from both sides and this declarative, I call it literature, the reality, of course, it's much, much more richer and interesting and diverse and so on. And I wanted to show you some of the diversity that is arising from such a source. Such sources, or some sources that I brought you today, yes, to your attention.
Thank you for the question. We still have 3 minutes. If anyone wants to jump in with the last.
Ada is very strict with us today, yes.
We can sit here for longer, but I guess it's late both in Ukraine and Israel. So I want to thank you, Judith, again. It was wonderful talk, and it's very exciting topic which changes a lot of our assumptions and a lot of assumptions we have in literature. And I hope you will write your article, and you also are a very prolific writer, and we have now a reading list from you after your lecture. And I want to thank everyone for visiting and for attention. And next week on Wednesday we will have talk by Nadia Skokova, which will be dedicated to rural Jews in modern times in 19th and 20th century. It will be in Ukrainian language. So perhaps some of those of you who know Ukrainian language can join. And yes, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure. Bye.